Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Head to Head, a Star Wars show. Looks like there's plenty of movement going on in the Obi Wan series this time. We got that, and we got all of your favorite Star Wars discussion, and it's all happening right now.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And it's good to be back with you guys. It's actually been a little bit.
Yeah, man.
So what's been going on with you?
Oh, man. Lots of stuff. Been on vacation a little bit, much needed. Unfortunately, I was taking care of my aunt for some years, and unfortunately, she passed away this week. So been taking care of that. So it's good to kind of get things back
to normal and talk a little bit Star Wars and, just like,
right, exactly.
Just kind of, kick back and enjoy life. Well, we got a lot that we can talk about.
Definitely.
There's been a lot happening. I mean, as usual, right? There's always something going on in the world of Star Wars. I remember there used to be all kinds of stuff that was, it would be like weeks or even months before.
Mm-hmm.
But this time it looks like we got some movement on the Obi Wan series.
Yeah, that's a real big thing. We also have good old Ronaldo. He's here with us as well.
Oh, perfect. Hey, what's up, Ronaldo? All right, well, let's get into it. All right, so what do we got going on for the Obi Wan series? I know that they've actually done everything. Like, they've got Ewan McGregor's been actually like pumping up now, and he's been getting in shape. Which, to me, I want to address that first, because why do you think that they're doing that?
Honestly, I think it's probably because it's probably going to be a lot of physical activity that he's got to do. He's the star of the show. Unlike, some of the other Star Wars films where, he's not always, the main focus. You might have had like Anakin or Qui-Gon kind of, doing some things. Like in The Phantom Menace, like he really didn't get much action. Well, I guess he had a couple of...
Yeah, I don't know, man.
He had a couple of moments where, he did it, but he was younger then.
Yeah, but did you actually see the pictures of...
Yeah, with the biceps.
Yeah, he's like in way better shape than what he was for, like the Phantom Menace or anything like that. And it's kind of like what's really weird to me about this, and I want to get your take on it. And of course, if you guys are watching right now, be sure to chat in with us. All lines are open, as they say. But what I wanted to get into was... He's supposed to be older, right? This is supposed to take place, what was it, like 10 years after Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, I believe so. It's 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, 9 years before New Hope.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's not... So he's basically got to be like in his 50s or whatever. At least that's what he's supposed to be. Because I think he's supposed to be in his 60s around the time of A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm looking at is exactly what are they going to have this guy doing during this time period?
Well, the thing is, first of all, that was my initial question when you used to back in the day used to say like
I knew you were going to hit me with this one. I knew that was coming. I knew you were going to actually try to call me out on like, see? I knew that this was
I'm just saying, but
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And I think that's why everybody is so kind of hopped up and curious about it. Like to your actual point, I think that even Ewan McGregor himself said that, he felt like there was some story that needed to be told between those events. So by that, by what we've already seen from Obi-Wan in A New Hope, of course, by that time, he's become one with the Force. And so we kind of know how that ends, and we kind of saw the beginning of that. But, there's this whole gap of time. And now that we've seen the end of Revenge of the Sith, we would know, okay, of course we knew he survived, but there's a whole, gap, a major gap, that's in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Now, my question, honestly, is I wonder why they chose that time period. Why didn't they try earlier?
Yeah, that's the biggest mystery to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is why are they now? At first, if you remember a few weeks ago when we addressed this, I said that one of the primary reasons was because the time period that's almost directly in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope would actually be, in my opinion anyway, the best time to do it. Because if you do it a little bit too close to Revenge of the Sith,
yeah,
they've already... I mean, you actually have to be careful because there's a lot of stuff that's happened with the Clone Wars where they've kind of gone a little bit over that, right? But then when you get too close to Episode 4, that's when you're stepping into Rebels and a bunch of other comics and stuff like that they've dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas directly in the middle, you really don't see a whole lot of material written about it.
Right.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there's actually almost nothing written about the time period that they're thinking of setting the Obi Wan series.
Yeah, I mean, because you kind of have to wonder, like, where's the Empire in this particular stage? Because, when we hear about, when we get to A New Hope, you hear Tarkin say, well, the last of the Republic has been swept away, or the Republic has been swept away. So you're kind of wondering, like, okay, well, so the Republic was still kind of intact at that time. Mm-hmm. So you go 9 years before the events of A New Hope, the Republic is still definitely around.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to wonder, I'm really more so curious, how is this happening with the Empire? Because you have Palpatine, who's basically transformed the Republic as we knew it into the Galactic Empire. But then there's still like the Republic that's still kind of trying to hold on. So you got to kind of wonder politically, like, how are things, going, how that's...
Well, that's one of the reasons why I think that this is such a fantastic time period to cover, because you get either the beginnings of when the Empire is just sort of coming into power and taking over, and then when you get a little bit too close to A New Hope, now you're talking about, hey, the Empire is almost fully in control at this point. And then, of course, we know in A New Hope, they basically just dissolved the Republic. Mm-hmm. The whole Imperial Senate's been wiped out.
Yep.
Because that was almost a puppet organization anyway. It was, as they said, the last remnants of that era.
Right.
So the thing that I'm fascinated about, which is basically what you're talking about here, is what's it like in between, where the Empire's starting to gain more and more traction, but you still have the higher, the infrastructure and all this stuff of the Republic. Mm-hmm. How did that go? And I think that there's a lot of stories that could be told. And I've often said this, that I don't think, one of the things that a lot of critics say about any kind of an Obi Wan series taking place is like, what, are we going to see him just basically moping in a room somewhere on Tatooine? I mean, really, there's not a whole lot of story, but I've always disagreed with that. I've always said there's a lot of story that you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, when you look at the Empire too, in Rogue One, because they even made mention of when Vader actually had that whole meeting with Krennic, and he's basically saying, like, there is no Death Star. It was destroyed, Jedha was destroyed in a mining accident. It's like, well, why are you still hiding stuff when you're like the government now? So but it's still that government that's still kind of, you still kind of have some factions of that was still kind of fighting back. So when you start looking at Obi-Wan now, and you even saw it like in Rogue One where they made mention of where Bail Organa is kind of like, maybe you can contact your little Jedi friend, help us out here. So they know of Obi-Wan, especially Bail, because, he was there when, they decided to make, okay, we'll take Leia, you take Luke, and, off they go. So at this point where not Luke, but now you have Obi-Wan, who is supposed to be the guardian over Luke. I'm kind of wondering, like, how that's going to happen if he's running around helping out the Republic. Is he bringing, of course he can't bring Luke with him. So, like, how are you really truly protecting Luke if you're out running and making, all these different adventures? Because what if you die in the midst of helping, the Republic? How do you now Luke doesn't have that person there to kind of bring him to his destiny?
Well, and and you bring up a lot of really good points. So let me just go over a couple of things that at least what I'm thinking, because I think it's important to bring up the fact that, yes, you did have a very bumpy relationship between Owen and Beru and Obi-Wan. Obviously, we get this whole thing in, A New Hope or whatever, where Owen is definitely not a fan of Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, he was actually entrusted to take care of him and everything else. So at some point, if Obi-Wan is out there and he's doing all these crazy adventures and stuff like that, it's exactly what you said. At what point does he start to take an interest in Luke? Because I can't see him taking an interest in, like an 8-year-old kid or something. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, there's got to be a point to where Obi-Wan stops turning his attention outward and a little bit more inward. So in other words, okay, he's running around on all these adventures trying to preserve the Republic or save the Republic or maybe accomplish some missions, probably more for the rebellion, because don't forget, when Leia gave the message that ended up in Luke's hands, it was "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi."
Right.
And, I think a lot of that stems from the fact that Obi-Wan was probably doing a lot more than what we thought he was.
Sure.
During that time period.
Yeah, because, when she made mention of, you helped my father in the Clone Wars, you said you fought with my father in the Clone Wars. She also said, and my other thing is, how do you even know Obi-Wan? Because,
right.
How do you even know that name?
She was just born or whatever, and it's kind of like...
And he left, so it's not like he was around.
Well, here's the thing that's really fascinating to me about this whole thing, and that is that, okay, he's been going by the name Ben.
Right.
So he's Ben Kenobi, which is probably the most utterly ridiculous thing in the world, right?
Yeah,
because
it's like Superman with glasses.
Exactly. Because, here's the thing. It's like he's out there running around and now he's Ben Kenobi. So my biggest thing is, are we going to see, basically like a Ben Kenobi running around the galaxy trying to basically sell this persona that he has? Because obviously he can't really use the Force much, or the clones would get him, or the stormtroopers or whatever. So there's a lot of things, and it's kind of like you pointed out. How does she know? How does she know? Because she used the name Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and so my only way I can see that is if she learned it from Bail.
Yeah, she might have, but...
if her father, because she still worked close with her father, so she knew, like, well, Obi-Wan. Okay, so she knows this,
Yeah, but it's kind of like, would you think that she's actually... are they talking about him a lot?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure he, and probably, especially in close quarters, because, between, Bail, his wife, Leia, of course, that's in-house, conversations. I'm sure Leia, being who she is, she's very inquisitive about, like, okay, well, if Mom and, if you guys didn't have...
That's kind of dangerous, though, man.
That's what I'm saying. There's a lot...
Especially because she ends up being pretty much like a senator almost herself.
Right.
It just seems to me like, and she's so prominent among Vader, Tarkin. It's kind of like she knows all these people, right? She's brought aboard the Death Star, and
yeah.
Was it the Death Star? Or was it a Star? It was the Death Star.
Yeah, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, Darth Vader. Only you could be so bold, and Tarkin. I smelled your foul stench when you were brought on board. It's like, okay, you're kind of these people.
Oh yeah.
It's not just kind of like, oh, I've heard of them or whatever. She's like really familiar with them.
Well, that's what I said. Like, even because that gives credence to Rogue One when you're talking about, like I said, when Vader's like, well, there is no Death Star. It was destroyed in a mining accident. It was just kind of like
that is such a political. I was rolling on the floor when they started talking about that. I was like, really?
Exactly, and
that's what you guys are going with.
And that's the funny thing, because of course, everything is coming from the top with Palpatine. He's kind of like, all right. He's still selling this whole idea to people that the Empire is really trying to protect people. And that's been the whole kind of thing that, even throughout the Clone Wars, Rebels, all of that, it's always been like, okay, well, Saw Gerrera is, he's against the Empire. We're trying to keep you guys safe. And, that's the propaganda that they're putting out there. And like you said before, like a lot of people were thinking that the Empire was good. Like, no, it's like no different than how we would feel about our own military. Like, no, the country is great, and but unbeknownst to them, it's like, okay, well, you got this, sociopath basically in the highest seat of the Empire. So with Leia, I think that what's going on with her could be is that she's kind of observing everything that's kind of transpiring in politics, because of course she's got into it because of her father. And then now she's like, okay, she becomes acquainted with, Darth Vader. Of course, at this point, he's made his presence known in various sectors or whatnot. Tarkin, likewise. And so, yeah, that's why she knows him. But I think behind closed doors, Bail is probably mentioned like, well, back a long time ago before you were born, this is this is what the Republic was. The Republic was actually this, and the Jedi ruled, so they were to protect, the keepers of the peace. And so he's probably giving her the history lessons of what the Republic used to be. No different than we would teach our children our own American history, right?
Well, it goes to the thing too, where I'm sure that, you get a situation where, okay, the Jedi have gone completely underground. It's almost probably illegal to even talk about them, but you're going to, behind closed doors, you're going to whisper about them. You're going to talk about their various accomplishments. You're going to basically go into the history because you want to pass this stuff on. And as you pointed out, there's a lot of propaganda going on at this point. And because of that, people like Bail, people that were actually a part of the rebellion at this point, who want to restore the galaxy to the way that it used to be, want to keep that alive.
Yeah.
So I think that you do bring up, some good points, but what else? So we got all this, by the way, off of the fact that Obi-Wan was kind of buff.
I know, right?
Just so you guys know where our head's at, just think about that. Let that sink in for a second. All we said was that Ewan McGregor was working out and was looking a little muscular, and now we're going in deep.
Yeah, it was like, well, why? Why is he doing this? I think and here's something about the series.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that now, as we promised in our headline.
So, of course, while he's on Tatooine, he's going to receive his training from Qui-Gon as far as, how to, become a Force Ghost and things like that. One of the major reasons that, he is probably working out is because Hayden Christensen is returning as Darth Vader.
Yeah, that just adds another whole level of complexity to this thing, man. I mean, it's...
So the fact that you're bringing Hayden Christensen back in the suit...
Yeah, but let's just get this out of the way right now. Now, they did basically promise that we were going to get some duels. So we know that. We know that we were promised that we're going to get some duels. We're going to get a rematch. I think they called it like the rematch of the century.
That's what Kathleen called it.
Yeah, between that. So my question to you is, because you are the only other one, but hey, it's not just to you, it's to all you guys out there watching us right now. Do you think that this is in any way going to hurt the canon, basically, of A New Hope? Because a lot of people are really concerned about the fact that it could actually start to... I guess the best way to put it is it could tarnish it. In the same way that a lot of people think that some of the sequel trilogy stuff sort of blew back a little bit. Like, for instance, in Rise of Skywalker, by bringing Palpatine back, it sort of cheapened his death a little bit and maybe made Anakin's sacrifice a little bit less meaningful. Now, I don't fall into that camp. I used to. But when I really started to think about everything in totality, it made sense. I mean, do I think it was cheap? Yes, I think it was kind of cheap to bring back Palpatine, but it does work from a story perspective. So my question to you here is, and all of you out there, do you think that by having them battle again, and what type of battle do you think it's going to be? Because we're always assuming that it's a lightsaber battle, but it may not be. So, first of all, what kind of battle do you think that they're going to have? Do you think it's going to be a lightsaber rematch? And if so, do you think it's going to lessen what we saw in A New Hope or strengthen it?
The only reason I could see it being lessened is because, you're dealing with younger actors. So that now when you get back to, once again, seeing the duel in episode 4, it's kind of like, yeah, this isn't as exciting as this one will probably be. As far as just the concept of it, I mean, I've always kind of liked the fact that it was a long time since they've seen each other. I've always liked that aspect of it. I mean, even this is like, okay, well, it's 9 years, or 10 years since Revenge of the Sith. So, I mean, 10 years is a significant amount of time. And I guess one more wouldn't have really mattered because, well, let's see, he's supposed to be in his 60s. So I guess maybe like another 10.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with this. And
you see what I'm saying?
These are the exact thoughts that I had myself. Exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking the same thing in terms of it's early enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's early enough in the timeline that you could still have this epic battle or whatever, and then everything that's said in episode 4
still holds up.
Will still make sense. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that that's one of those things that we have to look at.
The only thing I can say, I mean, it still holds up, but let's just face it though, like when you listen to the dialogue in episode 4, and when Vader's talking to Tarkin, he's just like, he is here. Obi Wan Kenobi. Yes, saying like, I felt this presence, and Obi Wan is here and the Force is with him and blah 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 blah. So
this is great. We're gonna get
like a one-man show.
Yeah, like a one-man show right here. It's like, all right, join us next time when we do episode 5.
Masterpiece Theater.
Exactly. But
you see what I'm saying? So like when everything is implied that like, okay, they haven't seen each other in a very long time.
I think Lucas even said they hadn't seen each other in a very long time.
Yeah, and so like you get, like even when you see the end of Revenge of the Sith, it's like, okay, that whole moment is like very touching and like kind of heartbreaking because those guys for a long time have been like brothers. And then all of a sudden, like that friendship and brotherhood was just ripped apart. And they literally just drew their line in the sand. And,
or the lava, as it were.
So, Obi-Wan kind of goes off, takes the lightsaber with him. He believes Anakin to be dead. And then, of course, Palpatine comes and rescues him. And, of course, he becomes Vader. Well, the mechanical Vader. So I can understand why it would kind of lose a little bit of that just because you don't want to have it kind of marred by like, okay, well, I just saw you a couple of years ago. And then now you're back. You know what I mean?
But again, it's still like 9 years before, though. I mean, granted, it's a little bit different than 20.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
I mean, 9 years ago, man. I mean, think about that. That'd be like seeing somebody in
2010.
12?
I mean, well, yeah.
Hey, we never said that we were mathematicians.
I was about to go up and I got my number.
I know, it's 2012.
Yeah.
2012, if it was in February, right?
Right.
2012 is 9 years ago. That was a long time. That would be, like, there were some kids that we had taught, that we hadn't seen really since then.
Right.
And it would be kind of weird to see them now. I mean, not weird, but it would be completely different. It would be a different experience. And I think that that's what you could still sell it. Again, I think that it could still be sold. It's just, it's like you said, it doesn't have the same impact, though. Yeah. Like, if the last time they had seen each other was when Obi-Wan basically was responsible for cutting off his limbs and making him Darth Vader, that's impact.
The only thing it does kind of rectify, though, in a way, is how Obi-Wan knew what Vader looked like. or that Vader was still around.
Well, but you yourself, though, used to say that...
You're saying the word Vader all over the place.
Well, not only that, but, they'd see him. I mean, he's a pretty prominent figure. Now, granted, it's true that there were times where it was almost like he was kept hidden for a little bit, but then he became almost like the face of the Empire. He was the enforcer. The Emperor basically hid in the shadows or whatever, but, Vader was out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only way I can say it really kind of works in their favor is this. Obi-Wan already knew Anakin was Darth Vader before he went to go fight him. Because when they looked at the security footage, they saw the whole knighting of basically, henceforth you'd be known as Darth Vader. And so even Yoda said, your apprentice, he's basically no longer consumed by Darth Vader. He is. So
yeah, this is a kind of thing that you used to use against me every single time I would make that argument.
I know, but I mean, it's still kind of like. So it's still the whole like, well, he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil, and it's kind of like, well, how do you really know that he's more machine though? You know what I mean? Like, I get it, the fact that you lopped off, his legs, but I don't know. Like, it still could kind of work out a little bit differently. I don't know, but the fact that
it's almost like you're going back and retracting what.
I'm not trying to retract it, but it's just still kind of like...
It's basically, this is great. We're like flip-flopping arguments. I mean, I was the one that used to make these very same arguments, and you were the one that was trapping me basically exactly...
I just want to make sure my argument still works on this.
Well, and it does, but again, I think that the point that we can make about this particular thing, the duel anyway, is the fact that it works, but I think the impact is lessened. I think that if they meet up again, there are certain things that I agree, in a way, you could either make the argument for, or you could say, I mean, there's like all kinds of things that you can say, but I think ultimately, if you're looking at the classic storytelling type, which, and remember, this is in the fantasy realm, I think it just makes a greater impact.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Let's go to the chats for a second.
We got some chats.
Yes, we do. Let's see.
As I'm waiting.
Let's see. Ronaldo, is giving me his condolences along with.
That's nice.
I appreciate it.
Glad you're back. Not sure how to take that. It's like, oh, thank goodness, dude. You should have seen. Hey, but we got the chats, we got the comments fixed this time.
Let's see. Ronaldo says it will probably be based on the comics that tell the story of Obi-Wan on Tatooine. And then, let's see. Mother Vansel says, I bought my first comic and it's awesome. I can't wait for my next one.
Random. Good. Well, I mean, he did mention comics, so I guess it's all right.
There are many things on Tatooine. Ronaldo says there's many things on Tatooine to keep Obi-Wan busy. The Hutts, Krayt dragons, Tusken Raiders, bounty hunters, and sand. He gets everywhere.
Ha ha.
Right. Good old Ronaldo. He said, I don't think it will hurt the canon. They did something similar in the comics with Visions, and it worked. But he does have a question. I understand the writers of the series is Joby Hero, and he's only written 2 films according to IMDb. One is the King Arthur movies and Awake with Hayden Christensen, both unsuccessful. Do you think this is something we should be worried about?
Not necessarily. I mean, I get the whole idea that people like to go back to the previous thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where I think it is appropriate to look at somebody's previous work and say, I don't know, this could actually be bad.
Right.
But I also don't think that it's necessarily fair to do that in every single situation, because sometimes it depends on the circumstances that surround what it was. You don't know what happened. Maybe there's reasons why a particular film or a particular project, whatever it may be, ended up failing. You know, I mean, look at Patty Jenkins in the original Wonder Woman versus Wonder Woman 1984. Now, if you were to base everything on the original Wonder Woman, you would have thought, oh, this is going to be an awesome movie. Universally, everybody thinks that Wonder Woman 1984 is horrible. So, I mean, I just think it's a little dangerous to fall into the trap of basing a lot of the stuff on prior projects. Now, let's get to the comic part of it, too. Because I happen to agree that I don't believe it was an accident that they started actually putting these Obi Wan comics together. Now, granted, it's been a minute, but I think that was to pretty much either act as a prequel to the series itself, or who knows, maybe they're going to actually adapt some storylines.
Well, I think, looking at, the success of Deborah Chow, because she's the one who's directing the Obi Wan series too.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, you can look at who's writing it, but
yeah, I mean, and she will probably, of course, make alterations, and pray that she don't alter anything further.
I knew you were going to say that.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I think that this is where you make your money as a director, where you kind of can see where, okay, this writing is a little wooden. I might need to punch it up a little bit here, or and it could just be. It could be great, decent writing, but what she brings out of the actors, I mean, you're dealing with Hayden Christensen, you're dealing with Ewan McGregor, who are tremendous actors. And so I think if you bring that aspect out and allow them to, especially with them both playing the character at some point, both of them have played them respectively. I think that they kind of, especially have that kind of grasp on, especially since this is something Ewan McGregor's been really wanting to do for a long time. I think that he's really going to really bring it, because this is something that he's really been hankering to do, and especially with Deborah Chow.
Yeah.
She's proven herself on Mandalorian. So
I totally agree. I think that this is the thing that a lot of people have to look at, is the fact of it's like another Mandalorian situation. You have a situation where there's a lot of people that are really, like, super into this. You have Ewan McGregor, who has just been dying to come back as Obi-Wan. You have Deborah Chow, who directed a couple episodes of The Mandalorian, and she's taken on this whole thing. And who is the showrunner?
For what?
For Obi-Wan. It's not Deborah Chow, is it? Is she the actual, I know she's directing every episode, but is she the showrunner too?
I believe so.
Oh.
Let me see.
If only we had these magical devices that we can.
So, oh, sweet. So Chow, Amini, and McGregor will also serve as executive producers, along with Kathleen Kennedy, Tracy Seaworth, the Queen, and John Swartz from Rogue One. Lucasfilm executive vice president of production, Jason McGatlin, will also serve as co-producer.
So it's just really interesting to me from the standpoint of all the talent that's involved. It just does not seem like this could fail. I think this is going to knock it out of the park, just like The Mandalorian did.
But I think so. But I think why Ronaldo was so kind of hilarious, because this is his first time directing a TV show. I mean, writing for a TV show.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody was equally nervous about Dave Filoni too, right? It was kind of like, oh, he's this animation guy. I mean, if he goes to direct, now granted, I know a lot of that was, well, that was a movie though. It's kind of like directing a TV show. Well,
no, I mean, honestly, I never really was worried about Filoni for two reasons. One, because he's the prodigy of Lucas himself. So that's the one that Lucas kind of selected as, you're the one. And then, of course, with the skill of Favreau kind of just assisting him, kind of getting his, just to kind of punch things up. Yeah, I think they make a great team. And I think that's what they're kind of doing here with Chow. And they got, surround her with good people. And even, like I said, McGregor is even part as one of the executive producers of it. So
yeah, he's really gone all in. And to be honest,
that's what I'm saying.
He's really protective of his character. I don't think he's going to be a part of something that's really bad.
Exactly.
I mean, it could be me. right? I could be.
I mean, we've said this before about other things.
We have. I mean, the problem is that when you're a Star Wars fan, this is the kind of thing that happens. You have the best hopes, and everything is going to be cool, and then something happens where you're disappointed, and then the toxic fan base
spreads.
Just makes it worse.
Well, yeah, man, like I try to tell people, man, like, every night you see Michael Jordan play, you want him to win. But he loses a game, it doesn't stop him from being great. You know what I mean? So
that's a good analogy.
But I want to go into something. It says, what do we know about the plot? Right now, we can really say that Obi-Wan is known to the locals as Ben Kenobi, and he'll watch over Luke from a distance while in exile on Tatooine. Don't think too hard about the fact that Vader failed to look for his son on his home planet. That the Galactic Empire didn't notice a young man with the name Skywalker, or that Obi-Wan's alias is pretty darn similar to his own name. It's unclear what kind of role Vader will play in this show. Obi-Wan could leave Tatooine and have a close encounter with his fallen apprentice, or we may just cut to a distant Vader at some point. This will be the rematch of the century, Lucasfilm Kathleen Kennedy said of Christensen's return, suggesting that the two will meet. Obi-Wan will probably commune with Qui-Gon's spirit as well to learn how to return as the Force goes. We have a few canon glimpses of this period in the first volume of Marvel's main Star Wars comic. Luke finds Obi-Wan's journals following the death in A New Hope. To recount a few of these adventures on Tatooine, like saving Luke from Jabba's goons, protecting Jawas from Tusken Raiders, and rescuing Owen from Wookiee bounty hunter Black Karsan. So,
Black Karsan's going to be in this?
It might be. That's what I'm saying. Like,
oh.
Yeah.
And remember,
you brought him up on the bounty hunter.
Brought him up on the whole top 10 bounty hunters, which if you didn't see that, you guys should definitely check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. I always say that, too. Like, sometimes I do. Sometimes, I don't know, a couple of days goes by and I forget. But, if I do and you guys are interested, check it out. It is on our channel. So, I should take this time, too, to point out, if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, what are you guys waiting for? Subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. It really helps our channel to grow. So, yeah, it looks... So, Black Satin, and then... it sounds like they're really going to be careful about what they do with Vader in this, which really excites me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to. You have to.
Well, but again, I mean, and these are the kinds of things that I talk about all the time on this show, is the fact that, yes, if you plan this stuff out and you basically go through with a fine-tooth comb,
right,
and you align all the stories, you could end up with something cool. But my biggest issue with a lot of things in Star Wars is they'll do things that, I don't know. I just think that sometimes they'll come up with a good idea, and then they don't necessarily think that idea through, and they get a little bit lazy and cheap in the writing, or they put in fan service where it shouldn't be. They don't put in fan service where it should be. There's just a lot of things. And when it comes to Vader, especially during this time period, I think that everybody wants to see Vader during this time period, but the problem is you have to be careful how you do that in conjunction with Obi-Wan. Because as we talked about earlier, the problem is that if you have them interacting too much or whatever, you're going to lessen the impact of that meeting again in A New Hope. On the other hand, if they don't meet at all and he's out there running around, Ben Kenobi I'm talking about here, if he's out there running around and doing all this stuff and they never really meet, or I don't know, I think at that point it could just get a little bit weird.
Well, no, I mean, I could totally get with the fact that what would be cool, honestly, is I would be okay with this. Obi-Wan's running around, he's helping, he's doing his thing without using the Force really like that.
Yeah, see, now in that sense, not to cut you off, like Anakin, like Obi-Wan did Anakin, but no, not to. I'll let you get to your thoughts in a minute.
Thank you, Kanye.
Thank you. I'm going to let you finish. But I think it's worth pointing out, though, that Uh-oh.
You forgot it.
I did. Wait a minute. It might come to me. Well, hey, go ahead and
you just
finish.
cut me off and then.
Go ahead.
So
the floor is yours.
My thing is like if Obi-Wan is running around not using the Force and he's causing all this kind of havoc, much like kind of like how the Rebels did, like on Rebels, where they were just kind of like, interrupting the Empire's whole little schemes. It's like, man, every time we keep trying to do something. But then it's like, okay, at the very end of it, like Vader's like, okay, you know what? I'm tired of this. Like, who is this person that keeps, or these, this person that keeps interrupting our thing? He shows up and he senses something. He's like, wait,
I don't know,
that feels
though.
like Obi-Wan.
I mean, I get it, but don't you think that Obi-Wan being really prominent during the Clone Wars, I mean, granted, that'd be almost like saying like Colin Powell or something decided to do. I mean, people just know who this guy is. I don't care if you change his name to Ben.
Well, I mean, one, you got to understand about who's really.
No, you can.
You got to think about it, like who's really running into Obi-Wan Kenobi though. Like you hear the name, but I mean, my thing is like people who actually have interaction with Obi-Wan or any of the Jedi were primarily your politicians. Like, unless you were like, some of the people like in the underworld.
Yeah, but if you're talking about, okay, just using your own example of Rebels.
Okay.
Those guys were interacting with like Imperial governors, Thrawn, all these like key people.
Mm-hmm.
So if Obi-Wan's doing the same thing, he's bound to. I mean, if he's trying to thwart the Empire, he's bound to run into somebody. By the way, the thing that I wanted to bring up when I cut you off initially, it was what you were talking about reminded me a little bit of, I always forget this guy's name, the one in Jedi Fallen Order. He was basically the Padawan.
Oh, yeah.
That basically had to stop using the Force, and then he goes and he saves somebody or whatever, and that's kind of how the game starts, where he gets found out, and that's a little bit like what happened with Kanan too. Mm-hmm. If you actually read the book of New Dawn, which I highly recommend, by the way, it's kind of the same thing. In A New Dawn, Kanan actually hasn't used the Force in years or whatever, and it's when Hera basically they meet up or whatever, and then they go on this little adventure, and then they end up thwarting pretty much the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's still like the Clone Wars, so it's Rebels. So you look at this, contradicting myself. But he starts to get more on board with actually being a Jedi, which I think is a little bit about what they could do with Obi-Wan in this case, is the fact that maybe, unlike those guys, he does keep using the Force, but then maybe he suppresses it a little bit.
Well, it's kind of like almost like how Ahsoka was, what I'm saying? Like much like Ahsoka.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Where Ahsoka would use it kind of sparingly or when she absolutely just had to. But, she was thwarting, all these little different things and kind of getting herself into trouble. But I think what will really work for Obi-Wan is that, he's moving around, he's doing this stuff, and then he eventually kind of chills out. Or maybe he, at the very end of thwarting like some major thing, Vader senses him. And he's like, Obi-Wan? And, they both kind of like lock eyes and see each other. And then they kind of just like, all right, Obi-Wan's gone again. Now, Vader could go on the hunt for him again, or not, just leave him be, because he might still not feel like, what, I can't kill him.
Well, here's the thing too that you have to look at that I think is also something that people forget, and you actually brought this up on one of our shows, is we're all talking about how Obi-Wan is, got to be a little bit on the down low and, hiding stuff. But he was the one in A New Hope when Luke was getting, he could have just shoved the guys, but no, he whips out his blue lightsaber and starts like cutting the guy's arm off, and I mean, it's just one of those things where I think that sometimes people forget that Obi-Wan wasn't necessarily hiding who he was, even in A New Hope. And so I think that it's fair to say that even back during the Obi-Wan, when this Obi-Wan series is taking place, that he might not necessarily be hiding who he is, but at the same time, he might not be going out of the way to bring attention to himself.
True. I think he's still kind of trying to hide it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have changed his name. But
he didn't really. First of all, we would have to know, like, how common is the Kenobi name? Right. Is it like Jones or Smith, or I mean, is it a fairly common thing?
Right.
Because if it's not,
yeah,
he's not doing a really good job here.
Well, you also have to look at this standpoint too. By the time we get to A New Hope, and he activates his blade in Mos Eisley's cantina, the Jedi have been gone for a long time.
I mean, are you going to try to say that maybe somebody got a hold of a black market lightsaber and it could be something like that?
I mean, of course, because they were always...
I knew you were going to say that.
But they were always... Because, they were always trying to sell those things. And, of course, that's a relic and that's something that, like, you wouldn't normally find. So it's just like, okay, an old man walking around with a lightsaber. It's like, okay, well, he's old, but you're not thinking he's really a Jedi,
I guess. What else do we know about this thing?
All right, well, we definitely know.
There's like a lot of stuff to this.
Yeah, well, we definitely know that, like I said, Hayden Christensen is returning back as Darth Vader. I kind of went over people who were actually on the show, so we've covered that. So they're actually going to shoot this show in L.A. I know there was a lot of speculation, and Ewan McGregor kind of cleared that up as far as where they're actually going to be shooting. And it's actually going to start shooting next month.
I was going to say, yeah, that was one of the things that I heard. There was either supposed to be March or April that it was going to start shooting. The LA thing is interesting because one of the things that's cool about California is the fact that you have like all different kinds of, in the mountains you have snow, and of course you have the beach, and you basically have different areas.
Terrains, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
They expect that Jabba the Hutt is actually going to play a prominent role in this particular series as well, which makes sense because they're on Tatooine. So there's going to be, and like I said, I think that we're going to see some of those characters like bounty hunters and all that type of stuff that's kind of going around, and how Obi-Wan is kind of adjusting to that type of life. Of course, we're going to see, or at least hopefully, cover the whole Qui-Gon thing, so that's got to be addressed. And this is only scheduled really to be one season.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about the fact that this is a limited series.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know why, but I keep going back to where it's almost like The Mandalorian, how it's going to go on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's something that's going to strengthen it, because if it went on, then it runs unless, of course, you actually said, okay, here's the story arc. Here's where we're going to start. Here's kind of the middle. Here's the end. Now we're going to tell this over maybe like 2 or 3 seasons. They could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they leave it open-ended, that would be dangerous. So the fact that they're containing this to one season, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, do you think we're going to see Yoda?
It would not be out of the question to see Yoda, but I don't know if they're going to shoehorn him in. Again, Ezra saw him.
Mm-hmm.
So anything's possible. But I just don't see them making that move.
Okay.
I don't know if they would have to. I mean, do you think that they should?
I mean, the only way I can see that maybe is doing the Qui-Gon Force Ghost training thing, maybe. Like maybe Yoda kind of appears to Obi-Wan kind of through the Force, or you might hear his voice or something, and, they might be talking that way. That's like, the Force is like the original Wi-Fi. So you can just, but I think, yeah, that'd probably be the only time I could really see that happening.
Yeah, I don't know.
That would make sense, at least to me.
I mean, it would make sense, but
you really don't need it, though. And I feel, I always feel like if you don't need it, don't shoehorn it in, because then now you're just doing unnecessary fan service.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Is there anything else that we
No, that's about it. At least all the major things.
All right. Well, has anybody in the chat's been talking about this at all?
Well, let's see.
Don't want to move on until we always make that mistake in this show where we'll start to move on and then and it's it's because when you're streaming you're a little bit delayed. So I mean, you end up getting like 5 chats. We've already moved on to the next subject and then we get a bunch of comments about
the last
thing, which of course, hey, that's fine. Like I said, on this show, we talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. These are some things that we want to get through, but it's an open discussion. That's the whole point of the show.
Right.
That's why there's no B-roll.
Ronaldo says, to be fair, he was hired by Zack Snyder, who's a great filmmaker, to write Army of the Dead, and by Hasbro to write the next Transformers movies. Franchise in dire need of rehab. So maybe his writing has improved, says Ronaldo. Black Cartanson. Black Cartan.
Kersantin.
I don't know why I can't get that out.
I don't know.
Fights Obi-Wan on Tatooine in the comics, so I really hope this happens. Me too,
first of all,
he's pretty powerful, man. I mean,
it makes a lot of sense to me to actually bring him into the whole show because, first of all, the time period is right.
Mm-hmm.
It's either like you could do it now or you could do it. Like, I think it was around after Return of the Jedi or something. It was either that or maybe it was in between Empire and Return of the Jedi. It was somewhere in that. Well, especially, in between Empire and Return of the Jedi, because that's when Vader starts to hire him to do a bunch of stuff. And then he even pops up a little bit later. So he's a character that I always thought they could actually bring out and, do a lot of stuff with. So,
and people have never seen a Wookiee bounty hunter, so.
Yeah, and I mean, the guy's like
massive,
and he's just a really interesting character. Doesn't he talk?
Oh, speak very.
Yeah, I think he speaks basic.
Basic, yeah.
I'm pretty sure he does. I don't really remember, but again, I mean, if you guys want to learn a little bit more about him, I mean, I hate to keep shamelessly plugging our shows, but that's what we do here. So check out our top. Was it top 10?
Top 10 bounty hunters.
Was it top 10?
Yep.
Yeah, it was. Because we did a couple that were top 5.
Right.
Look at me knowing our shows. So yeah, top 10 bounty hunters. Check that out on our channel. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button, like the videos. You guys know. All right, well, is that it?
No, Ronaldo says it doesn't need to be a face-to-face fight. It can be a vision or a dream or a clone. They will come up with something. And then he also, brings up, do you think Qui-Gon will appear? I think he thinks he will.
Oh, well, Qui-Gon, definitely.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I thought that there was a thing where Liam Neeson actually signed on.
Well, I know he wanted to play that.
The thing is, sometimes I swear, it's so hard to tell what's actually been confirmed. Because now Disney's doing this weird thing where they're not
saying yes or no.
Yeah, they're not really confirming things like they used to. They're basically, it's almost like they're just letting it go.
And then Ronaldo says, or maybe Cad Bane.
Now, Cad Bane.
I don't think we're going to see him. Well, maybe,
the time period to be right. He was more in the Clone Wars, I know.
Yeah. I don't see him really dealing with Obi-Wan anymore.
Wasn't he killed? Or did he make it?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, if anybody's in the chats or the comments, if you're watching the rebroadcast, let us know if Cad Bane, we could just look it up, but...
We want you guys to be more interactive with
Yeah, exactly. The interactivity, that's what we love here. After all, we're here on a Friday night talking Star Wars with everybody. It's kind of our favorite thing to do. So what do we got? Anything else?
I think we have covered it, my friend.
All right. Well, with that said then, set us up. What's next?
Next we have Duel of the Fates. All right, so this week, the big question is, which was the better battle? The Battle of Endor or the Battle of Exegol?
You're going to make me go first on this, aren't you?
Of course.
Okay, but I got it. So I think the best battle for this one is got to be Endor. And here's why. The reason why I think that the Battle of Endor was a little bit better than the Battle of Exegol, even though you can make the argument that Exegol was just insane with all the Star Destroyers that they had. Like, the whole fleet for the Final Order was just enormous.
Right.
And then they brought pretty much every ship from the Republic or it'd be the New Republic or, the Resistance or whatever. Like, every good guy ship that we've ever seen from any trilogy is represented. So the epicness or the scope, I don't even know if that's a word, was super huge on the Battle of Exegol. That I will give anybody hands down. However, and this is the important thing, and I want to see if you can agree with me on this, even though, because we do agree a lot on our Duel of Fates, or we'll talk each other into it. But I think that if you look at just the way that it was done, I have to agree with John Campea on this one, that I think that the Battle of Endor is probably one of the best battles in cinema history. I think the way that it was shot, I think the way it was done, I think that the stakes, it just seemed like it was a better battle, and it wasn't so... It had suspense, and it had all the right things, but it wasn't, so bleak. And I mean, there's just things about the Battle of Exegol, which I think are cool, but there's also parts where I honestly think that it's a little bit of a victim of the sequel trilogy and just the way that it was done.
Well,
are you going to go with the Battle of Exegol?
No, I'm actually going with Endor.
All right. Well, let's hear your thought. Why do you like the Battle of Endor?
All the reasons that you said are completely valid. One of the things about Endor was the whole, the fact that it was two battles at one time. You had one on the ground where you had, the walkers and the Ewoks and the rebel forces kind of down there, but then you also had the space battle that was going up above.
That actually reminds me a lot of Rogue One.
Yeah, and that's why I thought like Rogue One's battle was one of right next to Andor.
That would be a Duel of the Fates to do.
Yeah,
the Battle of Scarif versus the Battle of Endor.
Yeah,
that would be tough, but they are, and only because they're very similar, and that's true. Right. I forgot all about it. I was so focused on the whole space battle. Yeah, I forgot there was another whole battle on the ground.
Yeah,
which I thought was actually one of the cooler ground battles, because I also thought it was kind of neat that we got to see our heroes actually go on a real mission this time.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about it, too, was that, you had Luke, who was away, so he wasn't able to bail them out. So it was literally just those, and that's the cool thing I loved about the whole situation. The Battle of Endor put everybody kind of in their own lane. So you had, like, Han and Leia and Chewie on the ground doing their thing, and they were trying to lead these troops and bring down the whole shield, where you had Wedge. He's pretty much like Wedge and Lando are pretty much in the sky trying to, lead the troops up there and trying to get and blow up the second Death Star. And then you had Luke inside of the Death Star trying to, confront Vader and the Emperor. So you had really three big kind of conflicts going on at one time. So it was almost kind of an overload because you didn't know which one you really wanted to pay attention to, because the space battle was awesome and how they were all connected. You had Palpatine. He was like, all right, yeah, your friends are walking into a trap. It was I who allowed this, and I did this. And, so then Luke was like, oh, crap, and I'm stuck up here. I can't warn anybody. So then, of course, now Han and Leia have to kind of use their wits to kind of, bring down the shield. And then Lando is up there kind of figuring out, like, well, wait, where are the Star Destroyers? Like, how come they're not firing? And, they were just trying to keep them contained. And then that's when they realized, like, oh, that shield is still low. We can't do anything. And then, it was just like this whole setup. So I think that the Battle of Endor just had way, like you said, way bigger stakes. You had way more that was on the line. It wasn't, and it was very realistic, versus Exegol was kind of that's where the fantasy came in.
Yeah, I will go with that too.
Now you got Palpatine shooting out this massive lightning like he's Raiden from Mortal Kombat, and he's like, "Oh, now I can affect all these ships." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, why didn't you do that during Endor then?
It's like this giant EMP just went off in Palpatine or something like that. I was like,
well, and that's a good point too, because the Battle of Exegol does stretch more within the realm of fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's a little darker. And again, I mean, I liked it.
It was cool, yeah. And the fact that, these Star Destroyers who have all this firepower of a Death Star, they didn't even use it. They're just still sitting there. So it's just kind of like, all right. But at least, on the Battle of Endor, you got the Death Star, just knocking out ships.
That's what I thought was really cool. Like, when they actually started having the Death Star laser like firing and blowing up ships and just basically vaporizing them.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a cool thing. And it was, again, that was before Rogue One. That was the first time that we actually saw an instance where the Death Star wasn't just wiping out a planet.
Yeah. And then,
like it wasn't a one-trick pony, so to speak.
Right. It was actually like, it kept firing and destroying like medical ships and everything like that. Then you had these hordes of like fighters, of TIE fighters all over the place. It was like there was nowhere for you to really run. And then you had this blockade of Star Destroyers that were kind of keeping everybody from running. So it was like this one big massive trap that was just like perfectly executed by Palpatine. And now Luke is on board trying to deal with, he's got to contend with Vader and the Emperor. So the Battle of Endor will always kind of be one of probably one of the best battles of cinema history. So I agree with Campia.
Well, and the other thing that you have to look at too, that I think you may have neglected to include in this, and that is that Luke was actually with them for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was with them on Endor, but then he broke off. So you really got the best of all worlds, because you have this exciting ground battle that at first is with Luke, and of course that was mostly with the Ewoks and all this other stuff. But then it breaks off into, like you said, you basically have and this is something that they always do in Star Wars. This is one of the tropes that they always fall into, where, you have basically like the Jedi or something, you have like that section that's being told. Then you have pretty much like a space battle or something, and then maybe there's a ground battle or something. They're always splitting their time between these different things, which I think is part of what makes it so exciting. Yeah,
because you kind of want to get back to certain aspects, and you don't know what they're going to cut back to. Like, are they about to cut back to Luke? Are we going back to the ground? Or are we going back in space? Like, where are we going with this?
Yeah, well, that's basically it. I mean, I think that one of the things that they did so well was the pacing.
Yeah.
The pacing of it. It's not just... Because if you think about it, you could have this whole epic battle. We went over, okay, here's all the ingredients. But again, it's like I can give you the ingredients to an amazing cake, but if you don't prepare them right, if you don't mix them in the right ratio, if you don't, you're not baking it at the right temperature for the right amount of time, I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into this.
Sure.
But the pacing is pretty much one of those really, really big things that you have to get right in any kind of an action scene.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that they just did that really well. Now, that's not to take away from the Battle of Exegol. I actually thought that was a pretty cool, and it was reminiscent to me, but it was kind of like you said. It was sort of like, I think they were trying to make it even more epic and on a much grander scale.
They're trying to figure out how do we top Endor. And the thing is, like, you really can't, and you try to put the stake. I mean, the stakes were about as high as Endor, because if those ships ever got free and away from Exegol, it was over for everybody, because each one of those things carry a cannon with the power of the Death Star in it. So the stakes were high. And of course, initially, like, they didn't think that anybody was coming. And so it's just kind of like, all right, yeah, we're screwed.
See, that part I actually thought was really cool. I liked the hopelessness that they had at first. And even though, yes, it was cliche, I get that. I mean, everybody's going to point to that, like, oh, what a shock.
Everybody showed up to the party.
Yeah, and then, of course, you got the whole thing where Lando was, going out. It's like, okay, this guy was maybe gone for, like, 16 hours or something. Or actually, I think the entire saga or that entire movie took place in like 16 hours. So you might have had like, 4 hours or something to round up like everybody in the galaxy. I get that. What we're talking about here is not the plausibility, none of that stuff.
Disbelief here.
Just go with the actual scope and epicness and what have you of the battle. Is it satisfying?
Is it comparable at least to Endor or close?
But were you actually satisfied with the battle?
No.
I wasn't either. I felt, like I said, I just started talking about some of the things that I liked about it, but honestly, I felt a little bit cheated by it.
I did too. And the only reason why I felt a little bit cheated was the whole Palpatine part.
There was that part, but it was also, if you think about the buildup that they had from Force Awakens, Last Jedi, you thought it was going to be a little bit grander in scale, actually.
That and the fact that, you bring out these horses now, it's just kind of like...
I know.
I was like, okay,
I
really?
knew, right?
Space
Riding
ponies?
Horses on a Death Star or a Star Destroyer, it's like...
It's like Braveheart on the... It's like, what the heck is this? Man. But...
I mean, it was cool, but it was so out of place.
Yeah.
That actually took me out of the movie. Completely out of the movie.
Exactly.
I'm like,
I was like, what?
What am I watching?
Yeah, it's like, okay, what just happened?
I don't understand. I don't understand any of this. Where do you even get these things?
Right, exactly.
I mean, granted, it's like, what, did you transport? I mean, that's the thing. You have to, like, round these things up. You have to transport them on the ship. Then you have to land them. It just seems to me like it'd be less complicated to just find another way to blow the thing up.
That, I was disappointed with the Sith troopers.
Yeah, they phasma those things.
Exactly.
It's like, they give us this really cool thing, and then they show you all these cool action figures, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're going to see them, but they're not going to do anything.
And they're not even, like, any different. Like, at least the Death Troopers were cool, and they actually were hitting targets. Like, they were just regular stormtroopers in red. It was just kind of like, okay.
See, that's the thing. When they first started calling these things Sith Troopers, I'm like, ooh. Is it like Force using stormtroopers? Now, see, that would be cool.
Right.
If they were actually trained in the ways of the Sith. Think about it. If you actually had like these dark side using stormtroopers combined with a Death Star laser on each Star Destroyer, now, I mean, really would wipe them out.
Now, you couldn't have a whole fleet of them like they had of Sith troopers.
Well, he had time.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, because my thing is this, like, okay, who's really going to be able to stop those things?
Well, that's it.
Well, I mean, I'm saying you only have one. You only have one Jedi, and that's Rey. I mean,
well, they just write a bunch of more characters. I mean,
you know what I'm saying? Like, now I can understand if they had if they had Rey create like a whole new academy, and then like when the Sith troopers did show up, okay, then I can believe that. But it's like,
well, right, because otherwise you get the Superman problem. It's like now you got to write some just godlike good guy that comes in. That's like maybe
like even Kylo and Rey together wouldn't be able to take out like a whole, fleet of Sith trained troopers. Yeah, but I think that Exegol was cool in some ways, but it left more to be desired.
I agree.
So.
But what about you guys? That's the important thing. First of all, did they say anything?
Well, let's see.
Yes, always check the chats. That's the thing.
All right. So, Ronaldo, Battle of Endor. It was great and made more sense. I agree, sir.
Yeah, see, so far.
He also says the Battle of Exegol is fun, but had too many convenient circumstances.
Well, the whole movie had convenient. I mean, right, yeah. Basically, that sums up the rise of Skywalker, to be honest.
And has a quote, I'm afraid the reflector shield will be operational when your friends arrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Palpatine's troll face. All right. So Ronaldo says, how do you think the climax of Revenge of the Sith compares to Exegol and Endor?
Wow, he's like throwing out like another. Well, the climax of Revenge of the Sith was a little bit different. And that's what I thought was cool, because it was an appropriate ending, in my opinion, for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't the epic space battle. Actually, we got the epic space battle in the beginning of the movie.
Right.
Which I thought was a really creative way for them to start that movie out. Where it just, from the minute that it, you know,
kind of open, and I like how the camera movement came down into the battle.
Sure, like it
sweet.
Pretty much, because that's how all those movies start out. You know, it always, like, the camera basically tilts down, and, you know, it just kind of comes down, and you basically get the opening scene, whatever that opening scene is. Except for that really jarring opening scene of Rogue One.
Oh yeah,
that's still
yeah.
Well, I'll let that go because it's not a saga film. But the thing is, I think that Revenge of the Sith had more of an intimate ending. Yeah. Because you pretty much were having the relationship and the dynamic between Palpatine and Anakin shifting a little bit, going from mentor and student to master and apprentice. Then, of course, you had the eventual fall of the Jedi. You had the disintegration, no pun intended, of the friendship between Obi-Wan and Anakin. You had essentially the fall of the Empire, or not Empire, Republic.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't so much like a epic scope. It was like a series of really intimate situations, and it was really more about,
it was the emotional.
Yeah, it was more about pretty much the loss of relationships, and that's really what it focused on. It was really more a movie about relationships. It's probably the closest we've had to a Star Wars film that dealt with pure character development.
Right.
Even though there was a lot of exciting action scenes in it too, don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you know, you had the disconnect of Anakin and Padme, and then you had the disconnect of Obi-Wan and Anakin. You had the shift, like you said, between Anakin and Palpatine. You had the distrust of Anakin against the Jedi Order in itself.
Yeah, there was just a lot of key scenes in there, you know, that just a lot of stuff that, and you had to actually digest it. There was a lot of weight to it.
Yeah, definitely.
It wasn't the classic fun Saturday matinee type, you know, space battle or epic conclusion, which a lot of the other movies had, and is every bit as much Star Wars as anything.
Sure.
But that would be how I think that would compare.
And Ronaldo unfortunately had to leave us early. But he said, by the way, Palpatine lightning was cool.
It was cool. I mean, I'm not going to...
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was like...
Dude,
that guy was...
I mean, I have to say that...
on the hand of my cell phone some days.
There's a cheesiness to what they did, but there was also a creepiness and a coolness.
Well, it was cool how he became that powerful because he siphoned the Force energy from two very powerful Force users.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I could actually hang with when it came to that. It just, again, it was kind of, if they had just not messed some of the other things up, I think that people could have let some of that go.
Right.
But all right, man, I think it's time to, I know you've been toking on your drink the whole time, but I think it's time for us to get a drink, talk about some general Star Wars topics in the cantina. All right, so basically, The Mandalorian has done something that not a whole lot of Star Wars things have done lately, and that is it's actually been nominated for a Golden Globe.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been really cool to see that, you know, we haven't really seen a whole lot of things in Star Wars where at the award show, at least, that's, you know, on the main stage. Of course, you know, they always kind of win when it comes to editing or things like that. But I mean, just the overall show, though, you know, it's like in the forefront, and everybody's like, it's critically acclaimed. Like everyone like loves The Mandalorian. Of course, you know, Baby Yoda or Grogu for those of you who choose to use his actual name. Yeah, I mean, he kind of stole everyone's hearts pretty much, and then you kind of see the growth and development of, you know, each of the characters from, Cara Dune to Greef Karga to Din Djarin. So, you really get to see a lot of that. And so now when you see something to the where they're getting recognized for all the great work that Favreau and Filoni have really put together, and it seems like everybody knew from day one. Like when you and I first looked at the trailer that they did at Celebration for The Mandalorian, we were just like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. Like we couldn't wait for it because we thought it was Boba Fett at first. But then it was just like, oh no, wait, this is somebody else. And, from the time we first, saw the first episode, it was like, oh yeah, this is Star Wars right here. So.
Well, I think that's what's really interesting to me anyway about this particular thing is that, yes, Star Wars, when A New Hope came out and it was this fresh new thing, it was nominated for like 7 Academy Awards. I forgot. I think it took home like 2 or 3 of them or something. But one of them, I believe, was actually Best Picture. And ever since then, Star Wars has been more or less relegated to all the technical awards. It's been basically like, best editing, best sound design, best, whatever the case may be, visual effects, that kind of thing. Because no movie could really touch Star Wars when it comes to that, at least the current, whatever's current for the moment. It's always going to supersede it because ILM does the visual effects for, well, a lot of the movies, probably like 70% of them maybe. Maybe even more. And obviously, Lucas himself said, we're always holding a little bit extra for Star Wars. So there's that. But this is the first time that we have a Star Wars project, speaking like what we just did of character development. Right. This is the first time that we actually see a Star Wars project that focuses so deeply on character.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the reasons why it has captured everybody's heart, because it really gets into the emotion and the character and what's driving them.
Yeah, and that's why it's being nominated for a drama, and that's something that you don't.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah, that's what I was.
I mean, that's just crazy to me. When I saw that, what is it, like best drama, right?
Yeah, best drama, best television series drama, and so the fact that a Star Wars movie is considered a drama, and that I was trying to piggyback off the whole Revenge of the Sith thing, is because that was kind of like the first glimpse you kind of saw of a drama really in Star Wars, truly, because you saw all the different character development and you saw how it affected everyone around them, and it really did bring that kind of, even the music that John Williams provided just kind of brought that whole somber, that whole scene when Anakin, I always talk about when Anakin's looking out the window from the temple and Padme's looking out from her apartment, and that violin strum is just kind of like, something's up. It's like, man, this is about to go bad from here.
Yeah, it was so dark, and it was so, it was just so poignant.
Yeah.
And wistful, and you could sense that there were two characters who really did not want to be in the circumstances they were in. They wanted to do the right thing. With Padme, she didn't really know how. She could see that everything was falling apart, and she was a senator, and yet she had no idea how to fix it. She herself could not fix it. Then you had Anakin, who thought he had all the power to fix it, but in spite of everything that he was doing, the one thing that he was trying to do was save the one that he loved from dying, which, ironically,
he ends up killing.
Yeah, wasn't going to be the case. In fact, he ended up killing her, in a sense.
Yeah.
Which, actually, it's funny. I have to bring this up because I was talking to, I think, somebody from work, actually. And it was, either that or it was, like, on Facebook or something. Oh, it was on Facebook because I sent you the meme. The whole thing where,
oh, the broken heart.
Yeah, it's kind of like Maul's cut in half. Vader basically gets all like chopped up
and burned.
Palpatine's thrown down a shaft. Padme dies of a broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
really,
and yet she's completely dead.
Yeah,
like she can't come back from that. And it would have made more sense. This has always been a pet peeve of mine because it would have made a lot more sense to me if they had just said, like, look, she sustained injuries, to her windpipe or, or
get enough oxygen
or something like that.
Choked.
Yeah, exactly.
Caring for two, I can understand that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the whole force choke thing. Because when Anakin force choked her and it basically like knocked her unconscious, I thought, okay, how ironic would it be if he really did kill her? Now, we know that Palpatine basically said, like, in your anger and your rage or whatever, and that was basically a trick to get him to be even more angry and enraged and stuff like that and more powerful in the dark side, but you really could have made that be true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, none of this, of course, has anything to do with The Mandalorian getting a Golden Globe.
Well, but it does, simply because
this wouldn't be the first time that we veered off the subject a little bit, though.
Well, we're generals at that. We're general veers.
Yes.
Anyway, but no, I mean, it really does show like how, because that honestly, outside of the original trilogy, Revenge of the Sith is everyone's favorite movie outside of the original trilogy.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't going to pounce on you for Empire Strikes Back. I was getting there, but no, you're absolutely right, because everybody hates the prequels, but they all are like, well, Revenge of the Sith was cool.
Yeah, and the reason why is because you really got the chance to see how everything starts to really unfold, and you already got that development in that particular film. And so when you look at something like Mandalorian, now when you have more of a connection, when you have this baby, you have this infant that's so cute, but is trying to like save, the Mandalorian or Din Djarin, and then he kind of forms an attachment, because you could tell he was kind of like, I don't care if I bring you in cold or dead. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to get paid. You see that he starts to care more. You see that now he forms his bond, and you saw like, when he's taking his helmet off now, and just to save this child, and how he's willing to go through these great lengths to save this child. And, you're starting to see how everybody's kind of starting to, even Grief Karga is kind of like, hey, he's always like a grandpa or something like that. He's just so happy to see the baby. And, you see a lot of the different things that go on. Even the Ahsoka episode, you saw that, and it was just like, man, just her tone and how she was dealing with him, and like, well, his name is Grogu, and, he was taken from the temple, and this happened, and blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, the massive ending with Luke Skywalker popping up at the end. I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, that's a really good, and that's just his development. Then you had, I always forget, it's like, I know it begins with the name, Bill Burr's character, Mayfield. Yeah. I mean, his whole little speech about what he went through in the Empire and all this stuff. And
goodness,
I mean, there's all these different dramatic character arcs, or even, everybody forgets this one. What about when IG-11 sacrificed himself and he's slowly walking in the lava, and it's like, and this is the first time.
Yep.
Exactly. And Din, who hated droids, is now like trying to beg him not to do this, and to, I mean,
right.
There's just like so many like really deep and poignant moments, and I'm sure there's probably some people that are like, you guys are like really insane, but I got two words for you guys: Golden Globe. Right. We're not the only ones that sees this.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you don't normally see in a Star Wars film. You don't see that type of like intrinsic development.
Well, they don't have time. Remember, this is the first. Now, you did see that in the animated series.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like Star Wars is going to start cleaning up, especially when you come to stuff like Andor. You could tell that's going to have a lot of weight. I'm sure Ahsoka is probably going to have a lot of weight. There's a lot of things that are probably going to be coming down the pike that are really going to start getting Star Wars some recognition. Obi-Wan maybe not so much, just because it's probably only going to go one season. But it may do something. We don't know. Well,
and the Book of Boba Fett could certainly do something, depending on how they handle it. Now, that could be like almost like a purely action thing.
Yeah, that seems more action driven, but like Ahsoka is definitely going to be, because she has a whole past, and where has she been all this time? So that's going to be.
There's the thing that I'm wondering, and this is the thing that I've been wondering actually since probably toward the end of season 2, because I could really see that The Mandalorian was getting deep. And I was thinking the same thing, like this show deserves some awards.
Mm-hmm.
But if the other series end up following suit and they become just as poignant and effective and impactful, my question is, do you think that that's going to warm people up to some of the movies, and do you think it's going to actually change the approach that some people are taking to the movies, especially because you're not tied to the style of the saga films anymore?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to help make Lucasfilm look at how they're doing their storytelling now. This is what fans are looking for. This is what fans want. And I think now you're going to start to see a different spin than, like you said, what we got from the saga films. But for those of you who want to catch up and watch the Golden Globes, they come out February 28th. If you're on Pacific time, it's from 5 to 8. If you're Eastern Standard like us, it's from 8 to 11. So let's keep our fingers crossed and let's put one up best for Mandalorian.
Yeah, let's hope so. Well, now, speaking of, you mentioned the Andor series.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we've got actually the first set photos from Cassian Andor. What's that all about?
Yeah, so some set photos were actually kind of revealed. I don't want to say they were leaked, but they're actually kind of showing them in a small town in the UK by the name of Little Marlow. That's where the production is taking place. A couple of aerial shots of the sets have been obtained by the British tabloid The Sun. The outlet even initially reported that the series being filmed was Obi Wan. However, they have exclusive confirmation that the set does indeed belong to Andor. So it's a nice little, cool little set. Nothing much that you can really truly glean out of this, but
yeah, that's why, you know what, I was actually going to load up some pictures and I was gonna, show them while we were talking about it or whatever. But when I saw them, it was like,
yeah,
it was fairly nondescript. It almost reminded me of
it was like a new mall is opening up or something.
No, there was a yeah, right. There was what Star Wars movie was it? Oh, I think it was The Force Awakens. No, it was The Last Jedi, because it ended up being Canto Bight.
Oh, okay.
And they were showing like, it's like this Mediterranean, thing or whatever, and everybody started speculating like big time what this thing could be. Oh, Luke is going to be in. I mean, it was just so stupid. But I think that what's really going to be cool about this, the setting, like I said, the set photos really weren't that big of a deal. Like, it wasn't really worth showing to everybody. But let me ask you this. Do you think, well, let me rephrase this personally. Are you more excited after seeing the photos?
I'm excited to see that there's movement. I'm just glad that we're still moving forward and we're still, progressing towards that series.
Well, and there's another thing, too, that, we talk about, that we find out, and this is something we can talk about, that apparently George Lucas is coming on to write some episodes for Andor. Now, the question that I want to ask you is, he could have, and it would have made a lot more sense for him to come on to write episodes of Obi-Wan, because that's a character that he created that is basically during a time period that fits right in between his two saga trilogies. Why on earth do you think that of all things Andor, which he had nothing really to do with, why do you think that he decided to try to write for that?
I think that because he did create the prequel trilogy, and with the whole separatist thing, he can actually give more information about what the separatists and everything was going through prior to. So it's not so much about Andor himself, but it could just be the conflict that was going on as far as in the separatist movement.
Well, you do have a good point in the sense of that if, depending on where they flash back, and also the fact that this thing takes place, how many years was it before Rogue One?
5.
Was it 5 before? Well, Rogue One does kind of spill into A New Hope. It's like butts up against it. I said that last time, too. Yeah. It's kind of like, well, it's 5 years before A New Hope, but how long before? Oh, yeah, that's right. It kind of... So, yeah. So it's 5 years. So basically, this could be, where Lucas wants to get involved in telling some of the stories, like you said. Maybe it's a separatist thing. Maybe it's just that particular time period. Maybe he was inspired by Rogue One, because if you think about it, Rogue One, the plot was based on one of his stories. It was based on that first part of that crawl in A New Hope.
Well, also it could be, and I don't know, he could be trying to set up some things for Obi Wan too.
Yeah,
or to kind of go to add to the Obi Wan character from a different.
But the thing is, Obi Wan actually takes place like 4 years earlier than this.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it may add some things to.
I know, like if they're going back in time or whatever. But right. I don't know. I found it interesting, and I'm sure that we can. I sort of tagged this along onto the Andor story, because I actually thought about, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we actually just did this as one of the segments? And, we might, depending on what happens. It was announced. It's based on an IMDb entry that lists him as a writer of 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily confirmation from anybody. I need to point that out. Mm-hmm. It's a good indication, but, anybody can edit those things.
Right.
So we have to wait and see. But it did strike me as odd, though, that it would be Andor. Like, for him to actually officially come back into Star Wars at all, that it would actually be Andor that they would do that. I just thought that was...
Well, maybe he doesn't want to screw up anything that was major.
Right? It's kind of like Andor. Nobody cares about this. Either that, I'm just surprised. Like, Acolyte. I would have thought that he would have wanted to be involved in that, or even Ahsoka. No,
but that's more Filoni's character, though.
Still, though, it's based on his...
Yeah.
I mean, he was the Clone Wars. Filoni was kind of like his apprentice, and yes, Filoni created the Ahsoka character, but this is all... And again, Ahsoka's taking place during the time period of The Mandalorian, so I guess there is that, but... Mm-hmm. I don't know, but what about you guys? What do you think about Andor? Once you've seen the set photos, are you guys excited about it? Is this something... Does Lucas's involvement actually make this more exciting for you guys? I mean, there's a lot of different things, because, Andor's kind of a weird thing. It's like there's people that were fans of Rogue One that are just like totally chomping at the bit for this thing. Then there's people that were fans or just like Rogue One that they're like, you know what? That was a phenomenal movie, but I don't need to know anything about these guys.
Right.
And then, of course, you have all the typical toxic Star Wars fans that just basically hate anything. So where do you guys fall? You still have time to chat with us live, or, leave the comments in the comment section below. And while you're there, subscribe to our channel, hit that like button. It really helps us out. Ooh, we're going to get to one of my favorite characters now.
Yes, your good old buddy, Mr. Lobot.
Lobot. So there's a comic book now, which I have read. That I know. Isn't that great? We're covering something that we actually know something about. There was a time, I don't remember what book. Oh, I think it was Queen's Peril, actually, which I'm assuming you're still reading.
Yes.
That for some reason there was like this whole big like canon affecting thing, and we decided we weren't thinking about it. We decided to include it or whatever, and then realized that neither one of us knew anything about the book, and it's like, it's our main topic. So this time I do have some information, but go ahead, set us up.
All right. Well, despite very little screen time in Empire, Lobot became something of a cult figure in fan circles. A cybernetically enhanced human, Lobot assisted Lando Calrissian in the day-to-day administration of Cloud City. He was taken prisoner when the Empire captured the city, but a Lando-led mission rescued him.
You'll get it.
I know, right? Now Lobot is assisting the rebellion by using his cybernetic implants to communicate with a millennia-old protocol droid. The rebels hope to use the droid's knowledge of dead language to create a code the Empire cannot break. Thanks to Lobot, the rebels were successful in opening communication with the droid, but there's an unfortunate side effect. The stress of opening and maintaining a line of communication is killing Lobot. Lando realizes this and is asking the rebels to break the line, but the Leia and the others want to keep it open. He protests, but Leia overrides him, telling Lando the fate of the galaxy is more important than the life of one person. To keep Lando from trying anything else, Des Dameron pulls a blaster on him.
Yeah, which, by the way, this is Poe Dameron's dad.
I was wondering
so
about that.
it's pretty cool that they actually put all this stuff in there. I mean, this is, by the way, this is part of the current Star Wars series. So if you guys, I don't know, like, how into the comics you guys are, but what they'll basically do is they have the main Star Wars series that will reset every year or two or whatever, but then they'll have, like, Darth Vader, and then they'll have, basically all different kinds of characters. They had the whole Rise of Kylo Ren. They had an Obi Wan comic. They've got a Darth Maul comic that comes out. They've got all kinds of different things. But the thing that I think is cool about this is that this current Star Wars run that they're doing, it basically takes place after The Empire Strikes Back, which, as you know, is a time period that I've always been fascinated about. What happened in between Empire and
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi. Now, last week, when I had to do the show on my own, it was basically, I was talking about Boba Fett because this whole new Marvel series that's coming out basically deals with when Boba Fett got Han Solo. It's not like he went straight to Jabba the Hutt. I mean, he had a lot of challenges he had to go through, and that's what this whole comic series is going to be about. I think it was, I forgot what it was called now. Hey, I do a show, I move on, right? But essentially what happens is this storyline that starts out with this, I don't know, like the Way of the Bounty Hunter or something like that. It's going to branch out into the Vader, Aphra, like all the different comics that take place during this time period. And this comic series is sort of rubbing up against it. So this Boba Fett comic that I brought up last week is actually going to bleed into this comic that we're talking about this week.
Okay.
Which is why I wanted to definitely talk about this, because they're doing a lot of different cool things. Like you knew that Lobot was one of Lando's most trusted, beloved aides or whatever, and a lot of people were speculating his fate because you don't see him in The Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
So it's kind of like, well, what happened to him? Now, there's been all kinds of stuff written about what happened to him, but I think a lot of it was expanded universe stuff.
I always said Lobot looks like Murphy from RoboCop when he takes his helmet off.
Oh, yeah. But, as anybody that's been watching this show knows.
Yeah, you love Lobot.
Lobot's been one of my favorite characters for some bizarre reason. I don't even, people have asked me to explain it, and I can. I mean, I think he looks cool, but the more that I got to know the character and what he's about and all that, and we were talking about character development, and we were talking about just basically, the whole drama and the way the characters interact with each other. One of the things that's been really cool about this particular issue is you really see Lando's emotional connection to Lobot.
Now, my question is Lobot, like, we know he's cybernetically enhanced, but how much? Is it just the band that's on the back of his head, and he's kind of, or is he more like Data from, like, Star Trek? Or?
Well, kind of. I mean, that's sort of it. I mean, he's definitely a human.
So he is sentient. Well, he's just...
Yes, he was a human. I forgot. You would think that I would know this, being that he's one of my favorite characters and all that. But he's one of those guys that I'll read all this stuff on him, and then I'm interested in him. But let's face it, he's not featured in that much stuff.
Right.
So it's really easy to kind of forget about him. Because it's sort of like what you said in the intro. I mean, he's literally like in the movie for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But yet he's made a major impact. I remember when the action figure came out, I wanted it. Mm-hmm. Because the idea of this cybernetically enhanced being really fascinated me. And essentially what it was there's this old protocol type droid, and it's the only one that knows this language or whatever, and Lobot has to basically communicate and all this stuff, and 3PO couldn't do it. But I'm not going to necessarily give away the ending because even though the comic's been out for a little while, it's not like we're doing a review of it. So I know a lot of people have been really sensitive to spoilers. Like Monday, I'll do a plug for this one. This coming Monday, we're going to review issue 2 of the High Republic comic. Now, that's going to be a full-on spoiler discussion because it's a review.
Right.
And then a week from this Monday, because I'm pretty sure that issue 3 comes out like Wednesday or something, we'll end up doing issue 3. So that's letting you know, too. But when we're doing these High Republic comic reviews, or when we do any comic reviews, yeah, then it's game on. I mean, we'll give all the spoilers in the world. But when we're just kind of doing a story, we're really talking about how this comic is revealing Lobot's fate. But I didn't really want to focus on that.
Right.
I wanted to actually focus more on the fact that the time period and that his character is actually getting something meaningful to do.
Yeah, the cool thing I've always loved, when I first saw Lobot, I thought it was cool that, like, you know, Lando had the watch thing and he could kind of like Dick Tracy and talk to him, and you know, I thought that was pretty sweet. And just like, you know, he really didn't, you know, of course he didn't talk, at least not that we know of. So he just pretty much just did whatever he was asked, you know, and that was it, like no questions.
You know what he reminded me of? He reminded me of Mr. Hom from Star Trek The Next Generation.
He does, definitely.
I mean, it's just one of those things that I think that he says a lot by saying almost nothing.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do when you're talking about
and especially
characters like this.
Well, yeah, and especially when you don't have anything to cover your face. Like, you know, with Boba Fett, you had the helmet.
Right.
Later, you got the helmet, you know. But nobody, we can see his face. But the fact that he kept that same stoic, you know, face, and it was just, it never changed. And
yeah, and unfortunately, I think that the actor who actually played him passed away.
Yeah, he did.
But it's really nice to see Lobot get a little bit of time. I mean, I was going to say screen time, but it's not. Page time, I guess. Yeah, because again, I personally think that there's more to explore with this particular character. I know that maybe not everybody agrees with that, and I can understand that. You know, because again, it's one of those things where Lobot really doesn't do a whole lot. I mean,
Lobot doesn't do a lot.
Yeah, I know. See, I was kind of hoping when Solo came out that they would give us a little bit of the origin story there between Lando and Lobot.
Yeah, but
instead of L3.
L3, yep.
You know, and even though L3 kind of annoyed me, to be honest.
Yeah. Like the whole girl talk thing, I was just like,
and the social justice warrior deal, man, that just, you know, like trying to free the droids and all. I mean, it's just so stupid.
Yeah.
You know, but I did like the fact that she ended up being basically connected to the Millennium Falcon, and that gives a little bit of explanation and a little bit more backstory on why the Falcon's a little bit of a different ship and why it can seemingly do the impossible in different situations. Even though, I will also say, it sometimes brings up more questions than answers, because it's like, well, how come people were able to deactivate everything on this thing if there's like this sentient droid that's pretty much like controlling it? But that's a conversation for another time.
Yes, it is.
But I mean, as far as Lobot goes, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more backstory between maybe either how Lando met him or, you know, a little bit more of the development of the relationship, because I think that there's more there. And this comic book definitely shows that to be true. So, I don't know. Are you ready to move on to what is probably, arguably,
unquestionably
my favorite segment of the show?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. It's time to clear your mind. All right, so this is the segment of the show where you guys have questions, we answer them. We take 2 questions from our listeners or viewers in this case every week. And you guys ask us questions about Star Wars and we answer them on the show. So who is our first person?
Our first person is Philip Holden. His question is, why do you think Tarkin was placed ahead of Thrawn as far as leadership?
Well, we actually went through this at one point, I thought, where the Grand Moff thing outranks the Grand Admiral or something like that. Wasn't that?
Well, yeah, but I think that he's asking why was Tarkin placed ahead of Thrawn? Like,
oh, that's an easy question to answer, though.
Like, as far as like, why wouldn't they make Thrawn like a Grand Moff for?
Because you have to actually go through and read the books. See, if you're going by the original expanded universe version, I can understand a little bit more about that question, but they have since filled in the gaps of why. You have to remember that Thrawn is technically an alien. He's a Chiss. He comes from the outer or the unknown regions, actually. And it took a while for Palpatine to even trust him. At the point that Thrawn made his very first appearance, Tarkin was already this trusted right-hand man. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense to do that. Now, it's amazing that Thrawn actually was able to rise to the ranks as much as he did. And I think that's something where I think that's why people are triggered and saying, like, well, why on earth isn't Thrawn, who's this brilliant tactician? But if you really go through and you start to, especially reading the new canon novels, it really fills in a lot of Tarkin, too.
Gotcha.
So these are the kinds of things that I think that you have to pay attention to. This is where reading all the supplemental material and all the stuff that you really shouldn't have to. But at the same time, I don't think that there's necessarily anything in the movies, though, of course, Thrawn isn't. But if you take, like, Rebels, which is where he was introduced in any kind of a visual form, and then you take Tarkin, who essentially was in one film. Well, three if you count Revenge of the Sith, his little cameo there, Rogue One, and A New Hope. You can put things together.
In the Clone Wars, too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. But especially Rebels. He was all over Rebels.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit more of the dynamics of that relationship in that. And I think that that's a really, really cool thing that a lot of times I think is overlooked. It's not, a lot of people sometimes complain about, oh, I don't really want to have to go out and read a comic or read all these books or, do all this other stuff. And it's like, well, you can just watch these animated series, though. There's a lot of information there. I've always told people, I mean, if nothing else, watch the Clone Wars. That'll give you a lot of insight. All right, so who's next?
The next question comes from James Zager. Why do you think Qui-Gon had such problems with Maul if he was such a master swordsman?
Yeah, that was one of those things. I remember it was really funny, too, because I ended up reading the novel, The Phantom Menace, after I saw the movie. And it was funny because, the novel's going on, like through the whole novel, about how he's like one of the top, like 3 swordsmen in the Jedi Order or something like that. And you're going, I don't see it.
Yeah, right.
But again, you brought this up. I remember this is a show that we did probably a couple years ago. I think it still might have been in our first season or something. But we bring this up periodically because people ask us this stuff all the time. And it comes down to this. Your whole point, notice how I'm...
Yeah, I feel the heat over here.
I'm contributing the whole comment to you. I'm being cool about this. But no, because I totally agree with this, is the fact that they hadn't seen a Sith Lord in, a millennia. So even though Qui-Gon was a master swordsman, he wasn't necessarily taught to fight or repel a Sith. Now, I think it should be noted that when Maul first basically attacked him, which was on Tatooine,
right?
Qui-Gon did a phenomenal job to the point where he pretty much was able to hold his own against what was essentially a complete ambush.
Right.
You know, I mean, Maul just like jumped out of nowhere and just started. I mean, it was amazing that Qui-Gon was even able to get his bearings at that point. Plus, he was trying to protect Anakin. Now, obviously, he was starting to fall a little bit though, and that's why he had to just like jump up onto the ship and escape, and was like, okay, could somebody please explain to me who this was?
Right.
And what's it, like a red lightsaber? This guy, you know, he was obviously trained in the Jedi arts. Well, you're close.
Yeah.
But the thing is I think that it's important to note that, look, they haven't had to even fight another like Force user other than sparring with each other or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's really what it came down to.
And to add on to my point, the other thing is, you know, it's different when, you know, like I take it from the martial arts standpoint. It's different when you're like in a gym and you're sparring with people that you're, you know, familiar with. You're not trying to hurt each other. You're just like, okay, you know, let's work on this. Let's train it. You know, It's another thing when some guy comes out of nowhere and just starts like, give me your money. And you just have to start, like, everything is happening so quickly. And it's different when someone is as skilled as you, because you also have to think about it. Although Qui-Gon was trained and he was one of the top duelists, because look who his master was, Dooku. Dooku was a phenomenal swordsman, right? But that's what he knew him as, a Jedi master at the time. Remember, the Sith bring a lot of rage and anger. So that's a lot of force, and there's a lot of things that you have to. And of course, Maul is younger, he's faster. So he's coming at, and he can't wait to kill a Jedi. So
right. Plus, he's got the rage, he's got the hatred, and let's not forget what Han Solo said. You know, going against the living, that's something else.
Exactly. And let's not forget that. Look who Maul's master was, Palpatine. All right. So when we're talking about, like, you know, for Qui-Gon to do what he was able to do, especially like you said, that first go round was crazy. But then the second go round, of course, now he's more prepared. He's expecting this person now,
and he's got Obi-Wan.
And now he
has
Obi-Wan with him. So now he's like, okay, cool. You know, so I don't have to do this all by I don't have to do all the heavy lifting, so to speak. And then by the time, you know, once again, they get to that one little section where you have like those ratios that were kind of like dividing them. You notice that, like, you know, Qui-Gon had to kind of center himself. He had to try to gain control. And let's just face it, Maul just got him with a trick move. I mean, it's not like he really truly beat him like sword for sword.
Yeah, that's true.
He kind of like, in war, you know,
he sort of like kicked him and did a thing, and then like stabbed him really quick.
Yeah, he hit him in the nose with the hilt of the. Yeah. You know, he like popped his head back, so he was distracted, and then he got hit, and there was nothing he could really do about it.
Yeah, anybody could have fallen to that.
Yeah.
And see, to me, there was, and this brings something up that I'd always thought about, especially after reading some of the, you know, new canon novels, as I've often said.
Right.
But I always thought that even though story-wise I understand, I always felt there was a lost opportunity that Qui-Gon could never go up against Dooku as a dark, like a Sith user.
Yeah.
So now you got the old student versus a master, but now instead of as a Jedi, now it's a Jedi versus a Sith. It's like now you're fighting this guy as a Sith Lord. I thought that would have been just a really cool thing.
Definitely. And, you know, we kind of got that same thing with Yoda and Dooku, because we never got to see that battle with Dooku as a Jedi against Yoda, but now we just get the Sith version.
No, that's a fair point.
You know, so, but yeah, honestly, I think, you know, he was still, like I said, you know, hey, even Michael Jordan, like I said, misses a shot every now and again. You know, it happens. You know, you just
right. He's still one of the best basketball players ever to play the game, but you know, sometimes he'll do a boneheaded move or a rookie move, or just you know, sometimes he just gets bested for that day. That doesn't mean that he's not one of the best.
Right.
It just means that he wasn't that day.
Exactly.
And that's what happened with Qui-Gon, and unfortunately, it cost him his life.
Yep.
But I think that that's going to wrap up our show for tonight.
Yes, sir.
You know, I hope you guys enjoyed what you saw and that you'll consider subscribing to our channel, liking this video. Let us know in the comments section about anything that you were thinking about this show. And also, if you have other show ideas, you know, we would love to hear them. Because honestly, that's where we get a lot of the topics from, is from you guys. And we enjoy being with you guys. So don't forget to check us out on Monday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We're going to be here. We're going to be reviewing the second issue of the High Republic comic series, which is actually a really interesting thing. I still haven't read the book yet. I bought it.
Okay.
And I think the second one is like out. Or if it's not out, it's coming out.
Yeah, the one
that's the Claudia Gray one.
Yeah.
So I really got to get going on reading those. But we will be reviewing Monday at 8 o'clock, the High Republic issue 2. And of course, as always, we should. I know it's been a little bit bumpy the last couple of weeks, but I think things are relatively stable. We will see you guys also again next Friday at 8, where we'll be talking about even more stuff Star Wars. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.